The communication screens in the United Human Command Center flickered to life without warning. Every monitor, every display, every holographic projector in the massive underground facility near Geneva suddenly showed the same image. A creature that looked like a cross between a lizard and an insect filled the screens. Its four eyes glowed with an orange light, and its scales shimmered with colors that hurt to look at too long. General Sarah Chen was reviewing supply reports when it happened. She looked up from her tablet, annoyed at the interruption. Around her, dozens of military officers, politicians, and analysts stopped their work. The room fell silent. "Attention, primitive species of the planet you call Earth," the creature spoke. Its voice came through in perfect English, though something about it sounded artificial, like it was being translated by a machine. "I am Emperor Vexron III, Supreme Ruler of the Zarkoth Galactic Empire. For 50,000 of your years, my empire has ruled the stars. We control 10,000 worlds. We have brought 847 species under our banner." General Chen raised an eyebrow. She glanced at Admiral James Okoye, who sat 2 seats away. He had stopped eating his sandwich and was staring at the screen with an expression she couldn't quite read. The Emperor continued, his voice filled with what could only be described as boredom. "Your species has been observed. Your planet has resources we require. Your location is strategically valuable. Therefore, the Zarkoth Empire hereby claims your world and all human settlements throughout your star system." Ambassador Liu Wei, the head of Earth's diplomatic corps, leaned forward in her chair. She had dealt with difficult negotiations before, but this was something new. She reached for her pen, ready to take notes. "You have 30 of your Earth days to comply with the following terms," Vexron said. He lifted what looked like a claw, and text appeared beside his image. 1. All human military forces will disarm immediately. 2. All human technology will be surrendered to imperial authorities. 3. All human governments will dissolve and accept imperial governance. 4. Humanity will provide workers for imperial projects as required. 5. Failure to comply will result in the complete destruction of your civilization. The Emperor leaned closer to whatever camera was recording him. "Do not consider resistance. We have conquered species far more advanced than yours. Your primitive weapons cannot harm our ships. Your tiny planet cannot stand against the might of an empire that spans the galaxy. You have 30 days. Use them to prepare for your surrender." The screens went black. For a moment, nobody spoke. The silence in the command center was absolute. Over 300 people sat frozen, processing what they had just heard. Then someone chuckled. General Chen looked around, trying to identify the source. It had sounded like Captain Rodriguez, one of the younger tactical officers. Another person laughed, this time louder. Then another. Within seconds, the entire command center erupted in laughter. It started as chuckles and giggles, but quickly grew into full belly laughs. Admiral Okoye was wiping tears from his eyes. Ambassador Liu had her hand over her mouth, her shoulders shaking. Even the serious-faced General Morrison from the European Defense Force was grinning. General Chen herself felt the laughter bubbling up from her chest. She tried to maintain her composure, but it was impossible. The absurdity of it all was too much. She let out a laugh that echoed through the room. Did he really just... Admiral Okoye managed to gasp between laughs. Did an alien empire just declare war on Earth? With 30 days' notice, someone else shouted, which caused another wave of laughter. Captain Rodriguez stood up, still laughing. They think we're primitive. They think our weapons are harmless. This brought even more laughter. Several officers were now actually crying from laughing so hard. On the screens, a small light blinked, indicating the Zarkoth were still monitoring human communications. Somewhere on their ships, alien observers were watching this response. They had expected panic, fear, maybe desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, they were witnessing something they had never seen before in 847 conquests. Their enemies were laughing at them. General Chen finally managed to compose herself. She stood up, wiping her eyes, and raised her hand for silence. It took a full minute for the laughter to die down. People were still giggling and snorting as they tried to regain their professional demeanor. All right, Chen said, though a smile still played on her lips. I know, but we should probably send a response. What are we going to tell them? Admiral Okoye asked, still grinning. That they just made the biggest mistake in galactic history? Ambassador Liu stood up, straightening her uniform. We need to be diplomatic about this, she said, though her voice still shook with suppressed laughter. We should try to warn them. Tell them they don't understand what they're starting. General Morrison shook his head. They won't listen. Look at how arrogant that emperor was. Species like that don't listen until it's too late. So what do we do? Asked Colonel Yamada, the head of Asian Defense Operations. General Chen walked to the main communications console. She thought for a moment, her smile fading into something more serious, though her eyes still sparkled with amusement. She typed a short message and looked around the room. How's this? She asked. The message appeared on the screens. We acknowledge receipt of your declaration of war. We accept. See you in 30 days. More laughter filled the room. Perfect, Admiral Okoye said. Short, polite, and completely terrifying if they're smart enough to understand it. They won't understand it, Ambassador Liu said quietly. They'll think we're primitive and stupid. They'll think we don't grasp the danger we're in. They're lost, General Morrison replied. Chen sent the message. Then she turned to face the room, her expression becoming more serious. All right, people. We've had our laugh. Now we have work to do. Morrison, I want full mobilization of all defense forces. Okoye, get the fleet ready. Liu, start reaching out to our allies in the colonies. Rodriguez, dig up every piece of information we have on alien contact scenarios. And someone, she added, a grim smile crossing her face. Pull up the files on Operation Schoolyard Bully. I think it's time we taught these Zarkoth what happens when you pick on the wrong species. As the officers dispersed to their tasks, still occasionally breaking into chuckles, Admiral Okoye approached General Chen. You know what the funniest part is? He said quietly. What's that? They probably did research on us. They probably looked at our technology, our ships, our public military capabilities, and they thought they understood what they were dealing with. Chen nodded. But they didn't look at our history. They didn't understand where we come from. Exactly, Okoye said. They don't know that every human on this planet is descended from survivors. They don't know that we've been at war with someone for our entire existence. They don't know that we've spent 10,000 years learning how to kill each other more efficiently. They're about to learn, Chen replied. As the command center buzzed with activity, preparing for a war that the Zarkoth Empire thought would be an easy conquest, General Chen allowed herself one more small smile. She thought about those 847 species the Emperor had bragged about conquering. She thought about their 50,000 years of empire, and she thought about humanity's 10,000 years of uninterrupted warfare against each other. For practice, the Zarkoth had no idea what they had just started. 30 days suddenly seemed like a very short time, but not for humanity. For the Zarkoth Empire, 30 days was nowhere near enough time to prepare for what was coming. General Chen pulled up the Earth's defense grid on her console and began reviewing their assets. The hidden weapons, the secret projects, the technologies they had developed but never revealed to the public. The strategies they had planned for exactly this scenario, even though everyone had thought it was just science fiction paranoia. It turned out the paranoia had been justified after all. She opened a secure channel to the Mars colonies, the lunar bases and the research stations scattered throughout the solar system. The message was simple: it's happening. Execute Protocol Omega. Across human space, billions of people would soon receive the news. An alien empire had declared war on humanity, and somewhere, on distant alien ships approaching their solar system, the Zarkoth were probably confused about why their ultimatum had been met with laughter instead of fear. They would understand soon enough. War was coming to the solar system, but it wasn't coming for humanity. It was coming for the Zarkoth, and they had no idea what war with humans actually meant. Fleet Commander Talzok stood on the bridge of the Imperial warship Dominant Fang, watching the blue and green planet grow larger on the view screens. Behind his ship, 5,000 Zarkoth warships moved through the darkness of space in perfect formation. It was the largest invasion force assembled in 3 centuries. The Emperor had insisted on it, though Talzok thought it was excessive for conquering one primitive world. Status report, Talzok commanded. His second officer, a younger Zarkoth named Vixalar, checked his console. We are approaching the outer edge of their star system. Initial scans show several small outposts on the various planets and moons. No significant military presence detected beyond the planet they call Earth. Talzok nodded. And their response to the Emperor's ultimatum? They accepted it, Commander. Though the message was strange. Strange how? Vixlar brought up the human message on the screen. Just one sentence. We acknowledge receipt of your declaration of war. We accept. See you in 30 days. Talzok stared at it. Something about the simplicity bothered him. In his 200 years of military service, he had seen many responses to imperial ultimatums. Terror, pleading, offers of compromise. Never simple acceptance. What do we know about these humans? Talzok asked. Vixlar pulled up a file. Not much, Commander. They have only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. Their technology is approximately 2,000 years behind ours. They have a single homeworld with some minor colonies. Total population approximately 12 billion. And their military? Primitive kinetic weapons, chemical propulsion, basic energy shields. Nothing that can threaten our vessels. Talzok's unease grew. What about their history? Their culture? Vixlar looked confused. Their culture, Commander? Yes, how do they resolve conflicts? What is their society like? The younger officer checked his console. There's very little data on that, Commander. The scouts focused on military and technological capabilities. This was wrong. Talzok had learned long ago that understanding a species' nature was more important than counting their weapons. He had tried to tell the Planning Council this, but they had dismissed his concerns. The humans were primitive. That was all that mattered. Send a probe ahead, Talzok ordered. I want detailed scans of their outer system defenses. Yes, Commander. 20 minutes later, the probe reached the orbit of the 8th planet in the human system, the one they called Neptune. It began scanning for military installations. The probe lasted 15 seconds before something hit it at incredible speed. The explosion lit up the view screens. What happened? Talzok demanded. Vixlar worked frantically at his console. I'm not sure, Commander. Something struck the probe. Moving at... That can't be right. What is it? The object was moving at 0.3% of light speed, Commander. It was solid matter. Metal, we think. Just a chunk of metal moving faster than our probes can fly. Talzok felt his blood chill. Kinetic weapons. The humans were using kinetic weapons. But at those speeds? That required technology the intelligence report said they didn't have. Battle alert, he commanded. All shields to maximum. Advance cautiously. The fleet moved forward. As they passed Neptune, human defense platforms revealed themselves. They had been hiding in the planet's rings, masked by ice and rock. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Incoming fire! Someone shouted. The platforms opened fire. Long metal rods accelerated to insane velocities sleeted through space. The Zarkoth shields absorbed most of them. But several ships reported hull damage. One frigate hit by multiple rods simultaneously lost its main reactor and went dark. Return fire, Talzok ordered. The Zarkoth energy weapons lashed out, destroying platform after platform. But the humans had positioned them cleverly, using Neptune's gravity and magnetic field to make targeting difficult. For every platform destroyed, the humans took out one of Talzok's smaller ships. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it was over, the humans had lost all their platforms. But Talzok had lost 78 ships. 78. He had conquered entire star systems without losing 78 ships. Get me damage reports, he said quietly. And casualty counts. The numbers were bad. Very bad. Nearly 8,000 Zarkoth warriors dead. Hundreds more injured. And this was just their outer defense perimeter. Talzok sat down in his command chair, his mind racing. Something was very wrong. The intelligence had been incomplete. Possibly deliberately wrong. These humans were not as primitive as the report suggested. Commander, Vixlar said hesitantly, should we report this to the Emperor? Talzok thought about it. If he reported the losses, the Emperor might see it as weakness, might question his ability. But if he didn't report it, send a brief report, Talzok decided. Mention that we encountered unexpected resistance but that it has been neutralized. We are proceeding with the invasion. Yes, Commander. Back on Earth, General Chen watched the battle reports with satisfaction. 78 ships, she said. Not bad for unmanned platforms. They're regrouping, Admiral Okoye reported. Looks like they're preparing for a full assault on Earth itself. Good, Chen replied. Let them come. Colonel Yamada, are the surface defenses ready? Every city has been evacuated to the underground shelters, Yamada confirmed. All military assets are in position. Civilian defense forces are armed and ready. Chen nodded. For 200 years since humanity had first reached the stars and realized they were not alone in the universe, they had prepared for this. Every movie about alien invasion, every book, every video game had been studied. Humanity had spent 2 centuries being paranoid about aliens. It turned out the paranoia was justified. What about Operation Schoolyard Bully? She asked. Okoye grinned. Ready to deploy on your command. The Zarkoth won't know what hit them. Good, now we wait. Let them come to us. Let them land their troops on our gravity. Let them breathe our air. Let them fight on our terms. Chen pulled up a file on her console. It was a documentary about human history. Specifically about warfare. She had ordered copies transmitted to every Zarkoth ship in the system. She doubted they would watch it. But maybe someone would. Maybe someone would understand what they were facing. The file started with ancient history. Humans with spears and shields killing each other in massive battles. Then swords and arrows. Then guns and cannons. Then tanks and aircraft. Then nuclear weapons. 10,000 years of uninterrupted warfare. Not against aliens. Against themselves. Every generation of humans had fought someone. Every century had its wars. Sometimes for good reasons, often for terrible ones. But always, constantly, humanity had been refining the art of killing. They had gotten so good at it that they had to create laws to limit themselves. Rules about what weapons were too terrible to use. Conventions about how to treat prisoners. Treaties to prevent the complete annihilation of cities. The Geneva Conventions. The Hague Conventions. Dozens of agreements about how to make war less horrific. Because without those rules, humans would have destroyed themselves. The Zarkoth were about to learn what those rules had been holding back. General, Captain Rodriguez said, I have a question. Go ahead. Why did we laugh? When the Emperor declared war, I mean. Why was that so funny? Chen smiled. Because he reminded me of a bully in a schoolyard. You know the type. The kid who picks on everyone else because he's bigger and stronger. He's never lost a fight, so he thinks he's unbeatable. And then one day he makes the mistake of picking on the quiet kid. The one who doesn't start fights. The one who seems peaceful and calm, and the bully doesn't know that the quiet kid has been training in martial arts for years. The quiet kid didn't want to fight. But when forced to, the bully learns a very painful lesson. Rodriguez grinned. And we're the quiet kid. Exactly. We didn't want this war. We would have preferred peace. But the Zarkoth assumed our desire for peace meant we were weak. They assumed we didn't know how to fight. But we've spent our entire history fighting. Not just fighting, Chen corrected. Learning from every fight. Analyzing every battle. Studying every war. We have museums dedicated to warfare. Universities that teach military strategy. Millions of people who play war simulation games for fun. We have more words for different types of killing than most species have for emotions. Okoye joined the conversation. I read somewhere that humans are the only species in the known galaxy that evolved as both persistence hunters and apex predators. Every other intelligent species was either prey that evolved to be smart or hunters that evolved to be social. Humans are unique. We chased our food until it collapsed from exhaustion, and we fought off everything that tried to eat us. Death worlders, Chen said quietly. That's what the xenobiologists call us. Earth is classified as a death world. High gravity, dangerous weather, lethal wildlife, diseases that can kill in hours. Any planet that produced life like ours would naturally produce survivors. And we're the ultimate survivors. Rodriguez looked worried. Do you think the Zarkoth know any of this? Chen shook her head. If they did, they never would have declared war. They would have approached us as equals. Maybe even as allies. But their pride blinded them. They looked at our technology and assumed we were primitive. They never looked at our nature. The invasion dropships entered Earth's atmosphere over 6 continents simultaneously. Commander Talzok watched from orbit as 3,000 transport vessels descended toward the human homeworld. Each ship carried 500 warriors, 1.5 million soldiers, more than enough to conquer any planet in the known galaxy. All ships report successful atmospheric entry, Vixelar reported. No significant anti-aircraft resistance. Landing zones are clear. Talzok nodded, but his unease had not faded since the battle at Neptune. The humans were letting them land unopposed. That seemed wrong. Why build defenses at the edge of the system, but leave the homeworld undefended? Maintain high alert, he ordered. Something doesn't feel right. The first dropships touched down in the Amazon basin. Squad leader Crixen led his warriors out of the transport, weapons ready. They expected immediate attack. Instead, they found themselves in a dense jungle with no enemy in sight. "Secure the perimeter," Crixon ordered. His soldiers spread out, their sensors scanning for threats. That's when Crixon noticed something odd. He felt heavy. His limbs felt like they were made of lead. Every movement required more effort than normal. "Squad leader," one of his soldiers called. "Something's wrong. I feel..." Weighed down, Crixon checked his suit's readings. Gravity. This planet's gravity was nearly twice what they were used to. The intelligence reports had mentioned it, but experiencing it was different. This was like trying to fight while carrying a heavy pack. Then the jungle came alive. Humans emerged from the trees, from the undergrowth, from positions that should have been impossible to hide in. They moved fast, too fast. They should have been slowed by the same gravity affecting the Zarkoth, but instead they moved like the gravity meant nothing to them. The humans opened fire. Not with energy weapons, but with chemical propellant weapons that the Zarkoth considered ancient technology. But the bullets tore through Zarkoth armor like it was paper. The sound was deafening. The muzzle flashes blinded their sensors. Crixon's squad tried to return fire, but they were slow, sluggish. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. They would fire, then disappear, then reappear somewhere else. It was chaos. Within 10 minutes, half of Crixon's squad was dead. Within 20 minutes, he was the only one left alive, and only because a human soldier had stunned him instead of killing him. Similar reports flooded in from all 6 landing zones. In the European cities, Zarkoth soldiers found that the humans had turned their own buildings into fortresses. Every window had a sniper. Every door was a trap. The streets were mined with explosives that detonated when the heavier Zarkoth walked over them. In the Asian mountains, human soldiers used the terrain to devastating effect. They would lure Zarkoth troops into narrow valleys, then trigger avalanches. Or they would attack from high ground, where the Zarkoth soldiers struggled to climb against the heavy gravity. In Africa, the heat and humidity caused Zarkoth equipment to malfunction. Their cooling systems, designed for the temperate climates of their homeworld, couldn't handle Earth's extreme weather. Soldiers collapsed from heat exhaustion while humans, native to this world, fought on without any problems. But the worst part wasn't the combat. It was the psychological warfare. The humans had hacked into Zarkoth communication systems and were broadcasting documentaries. Not propaganda. Actual historical documentaries about human wars. The Zarkoth soldiers, huddled in their defensive positions, watched in horror as humans showed them what they had done to each other. World War I. Trench warfare. Millions dead. Chemical weapons. Machine guns. Artillery that could level entire cities. World War II. The Holocaust. Nuclear weapons, firebombing. 60 million dead ancient warfare. The Mongols. The Romans. The Spartans. Genghis Khan conquering half the known world with horses and arrows. The list went on and on. 10,000 years of humans killing humans. And the documentaries made one thing clear. Humans had laws about war. Rules. Conventions. Treaties. Not because they were peaceful, but because without those rules, they would have destroyed themselves. One Zarkoth soldier watched a documentary about World War II chemical weapons and asked his squad leader a question that was spreading through the entire invasion force. If these are the weapons they banned as too terrible to use on each other, what weapons are they using on us? The answer came quickly. The humans were using conventional weapons. Bullets, explosives, grenades, flamethrowers. All the things they considered acceptable in warfare. On the orbital command ship, Talzok was receiving reports that made no sense. His invasion force was being decimated, not defeated in a few large battles, but slowly destroyed in thousands of small engagements. The humans were fighting like no species he had ever encountered. They didn't hold territory. They would attack, cause casualties, then vanish. When Zarkoth reinforcements arrived, the humans were gone. Then they would attack somewhere else. "It was like fighting shadows, Commander," Vixlar said, his voice shaking. "I'm receiving reports of..." I don't know how to describe it. "The humans are doing things to our soldiers' minds." Explain. "They're playing sounds, recordings. Sometimes it's music, sometimes it's just noise. But it's affecting our troops. Some soldiers are refusing to fight. Others are showing signs of what the humans call post-traumatic stress disorder." Talzok felt sick. The humans were using psychological warfare on a level the Zarkoth had never encountered. They were breaking the spirits of warriors who had fought in dozens of campaigns. Then Admiral Okoye sprang his trap. The human fleet, which had been hiding in the asteroid belt, suddenly appeared. They had been using the same stealth technology that had hidden the platforms near Neptune. The Zarkoth fleet was caught completely off guard, focused on supporting the ground invasion. The human ships were smaller than Zarkoth vessels, but they were fast and maneuverable. And they had adapted Zarkoth technology captured from the Neptune battle. Their weapons now used a hybrid of human kinetic weapons and alien energy shields. The battle was short and brutal. The humans didn't try to defeat the entire Zarkoth fleet. They targeted the troop transports and supply ships. Within 2 hours, Talzok's invasion force was cut off from reinforcements and supplies. On the ground, General Chen personally led a counterattack in the Amazon. She was 60 years old, but she moved through the jungle like she had been born there. Because she had grown up in Brazil, learning to navigate the rainforest before she learned to read. All units advance, she ordered. Human soldiers pushed forward. They didn't try to capture Zarkoth prisoners. They were too busy. But when a Zarkoth soldier surrendered, the humans accepted it. They would secure the prisoner, give them water, and move on. It was efficient and disturbing to the Zarkoth. These humans fought viciously but showed mercy to those who surrendered. One captured Zarkoth officer was being treated by a human medic when he asked the question that was haunting his entire species. "How are you so good at war?" The medic, a young woman from Texas, looked up from bandaging his wound. "Honey, we've had 10,000 years of practice," she said. "On each other. Every single one of us is descended from people who survived countless wars. It's literally in our DNA." The officer didn't understand. "But why? Why so much fighting?" The medic shrugged. "Lots of reasons. Religion, resources, territory, power, revenge. Sometimes we fought for good reasons. Sometimes for terrible ones. But we always fought, and every time we fought we learned something new about war. We got better at it. More efficient. More deadly. But you have rules," the officer said. "I saw the documentaries. The Geneva Conventions, laws of war." "Yeah," the medic agreed. "We have rules. You know why? Because we learned that without rules, war becomes so terrible that nobody wins. We learned that lesson by experiencing it ourselves, by doing things so horrible that we made laws to prevent ourselves from doing them again." The officer stared at her. "And you're not using those weapons on us? The forbidden ones?" "Nope," the medic said cheerfully. "Chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons, all banned. We're fighting you with conventional weapons, the stuff we consider normal." The Zarkoth officer felt true fear for the first time in his life. The humans were destroying his entire invasion force with weapons they considered acceptable. What would happen if they used the weapons they had banned? By the end of the third day, the Zarkoth ground forces were in full retreat. Of the 1.5 million soldiers who had landed, fewer than 400,000 were still combat effective. The rest were dead, wounded, or captured. Commander Talzok stood on his bridge, staring at the casualty reports. This was impossible. The Zarkoth Empire had never lost a planetary invasion. Never. In 50,000 years, they had conquered hundreds of worlds, defeated thousands of armies, and now they were being beaten by a species that still used chemical propulsion and kinetic weapons. "Commander," Vixlar said quietly, "we need to request reinforcements from the Emperor." Talzok nodded slowly. He knew what this meant. Admitting defeat. Admitting that he had failed. But there was no other choice. He composed a message to the Emperor explaining the situation. He included the casualty numbers, the tactical reports, and one recommendation: negotiate peace immediately. Then he opened a communication channel to the humans, to General Chen specifically. "General Chen," he said, "this is Fleet Commander Talzok. I am Author Emperor Vexaron III stared at the casualty reports from Earth with disbelief. Impossible. This had to be a mistake. The humans were primitive. They couldn't have defeated a Zarkoth invasion force, but the numbers didn't lie. Over 1 million warriors lost. The invasion force retreating in disorder. Fleet Commander Talzok requesting permission to withdraw completely from the human star system." "Denied," Vexaron said coldly. "The fleet will hold position. We will send reinforcements." His chief advisor, an elderly Zarkoth named Mertok, spoke carefully. Your Majesty, perhaps we should reconsider our approach. These humans are more dangerous than we anticipated. Dangerous? Vexeron's eyes flashed with anger. They are primitives. We will not show weakness to primitives. Your Majesty, with respect, they have destroyed an entire invasion force. Perhaps they are not as primitive as we believed. Vexeron turned away. He refused to accept it. The Zarkoth Empire did not lose to lesser species. It was unthinkable. He would send more ships, more warriors. He would crush these humans and make an example of them. Send the reserve fleet, he ordered. 10,000 ships. That will be more than enough. What Vexeron didn't know was that the humans weren't waiting for reinforcements to arrive. They were already moving. Operation Prometheus had begun. The human fleet, much smaller than the Zarkoth Armada, consisted of only 300 ships. But these weren't the ships the Zarkoth had seen defending Earth. These were new vessels, built in secret over the past 200 years, incorporating every bit of alien technology humans had secretly acquired through trade and observation. Admiral Okoye commanded the fleet from the carrier Defiant. He stood on the bridge watching as his ships prepared to jump to faster than light speed. All ships report ready. His second-in-command reported. Then let's go introduce ourselves to the galaxy, Okoye said with a grim smile. The human fleet jumped. Not toward the Zarkoth homeworld, but toward their supply lines. Humans had learned from thousands of years of military history. You don't attack the enemy where they're strongest. You attack where they're weakest. The first target was a supply depot in the Keltar system. The Zarkoth garrison consisted of 50 ships guarding warehouses full of weapons, food, and fuel for the Empire's military. The human fleet appeared without warning. The Zarkoth barely had time to raise shields before human weapons opened fire, but the humans weren't using the simple kinetic weapons anymore. They had adapted, combined human engineering with Zarkoth technology, created hybrid weapons that the aliens had never seen before. The battle lasted 30 minutes. When it was over, the supply depot was destroyed and all 50 Zarkoth ships were either captured or disabled. The human fleet didn't lose a single vessel. Then they jumped to the next target, and the next, and the next. Within 2 weeks, the human fleet had struck 12 different supply depots, destroyed over 300 Zarkoth ships, and captured enough alien technology to accelerate human development by decades. But the humans weren't just fighting a military campaign. Ambassador Liu Wei was fighting a different kind of war. She had made contact with several species that the Zarkoth Empire had conquered. These species were not happy being part of the Empire. They paid tribute, provided resources, and received very little in return. They obeyed because they had no choice. The Zarkoth military was too strong, or at least it had been. The humans are offering us something the Zarkoth never did, said Representative Kalzin of the Marek species. He was speaking to Liu Wei through a secure channel, careful not to be detected by Zarkoth monitors. Freedom. We don't want to conquer you, Liu Wei explained. We don't want tribute or territory. We just want the Zarkoth to leave us alone, and if helping you achieve independence makes that happen, we'll help. Why? Kalzin asked. What do you gain? Allies, Liu Wei said simply. Friends, trading partners. We believe that free species working together are stronger than empires built on conquest. It was a radical idea in galactic politics. Most powerful species expanded through conquest. The idea of liberating conquered worlds instead of conquering them was almost unheard of. But it worked. The Mrek were the first to rebel. They rose up against their Zarkoth overseers, supported by human weapons and training. Within days, 3 Mrek worlds had declared independence. Then the Kelvari joined the rebellion. Then the Yuntok. Then others. The Zarkoth Empire was facing something it had never encountered before. Simultaneous rebellions across dozens of worlds, all supported by a species that fought unlike anything they had ever seen. Back in Zarkoth space, Fleet Commander Talzok had become a prisoner of war. After the failed Earth invasion, he had been captured during the retreat. Now he sat in a human prison facility, being treated with dignity that surprised him. General Chen visited him regularly. Not to interrogate him, but to talk. To explain. You fought well, Chen said during one visit. Your tactics were solid. Your warriors were brave. You did everything right according to your military doctrine. But we still lost, Talzok said bitterly. Yes. Do you understand why? Talzok was silent for a moment. You've had more practice, Chen smiled. That's part of it. But there's more. Tell me, Commander. In your 50,000 years of empire, how many times have the Zarkoth faced a threat that could actually destroy them? Never. We are the dominant power in the galaxy. Exactly. You've won so many times that you forgot how to lose. You forgot that survival requires adaptability. You became comfortable. And humans? We've never had that luxury, Chen said. For 10,000 years, we fought for survival. Against each other, against our environment, against diseases, predators, disasters. Every generation of humans faced existential threats. We adapted or we died. Those who couldn't adapt didn't survive to pass on their genes. We are the descendants of survivors, Commander. Every single one of us. Talzok thought about this. Your species evolved for war. No, Chen corrected. We evolved for survival. War was just one tool we used. We also evolved for cooperation, for building, for creating. But when war comes, we're very good at it because we've had no choice but to be good at it. She stood up to leave, then paused. I want to show you something, Commander. With your permission, Talzok nodded. Chen pulled up a video. It showed human cities. Not military bases, but regular cities. People going about their daily lives. Children playing. Artists creating. Scientists researching. Musicians performing. This is what we're fighting for, Chen said. Not conquest. Not glory. Not resources. We're fighting so that these people can live in peace. Every human soldier knows this. That's why we fight so hard. Because we're not fighting for an empire. We're fighting for our homes. Talzok watched the video and something inside him broke. For the first time, he understood. The Zarkoth fought for the glory of their empire, for their emperor, for abstract concepts of honor and duty. The humans fought for each other, for their families, for their future. It made them unbeatable. Meanwhile, the human fleet continued its campaign. They struck at Zarkoth military installations, always avoiding civilian targets. They captured enemy ships whenever possible rather than destroying them. They treated prisoners well, following their own laws of war even though the Zarkoth had no such laws. And everywhere they went, they left behind a message. We don't want your empire. We want to be left alone. Stop the war and we stop fighting. But Emperor Vexron refused to listen. He sent more ships, more warriors. He was determined to crush the human rebellion and restore the Empire's reputation. The decisive battle came at Proxima Station, a major Zarkoth military hub. The Emperor had assembled a fleet of 5,000 ships commanded by his best admiral. They would crush the human fleet once and for all. The human fleet arrived with just 200 ships. The Zarkoth admiral was confident. Superior numbers, superior firepower. This would be an easy victory. The battle began. And within an hour, the Zarkoth admiral realized he had made a terrible mistake. The humans didn't fight like other species. They didn't form battle lines. They didn't try to match the Zarkoth fleet ship for ship. Instead, they swarmed. Small groups of human ships would target individual Zarkoth vessels, overwhelming them with focused fire, then move to the next target. They used the debris from destroyed ships as cover. They predicted Zarkoth movements and laid traps. They turned the Zarkoth's superior numbers into a disadvantage, causing friendly fire incidents as the tightly packed formation got in its own way. It was chaos. Beautiful, deadly chaos, and the humans thrived in it. When the battle ended, the Zarkoth fleet had lost over half its ships. The human fleet had lost 30 vessels. Proxima Station was in human hands. Admiral Okoye broadcast a message to all Zarkoth forces in the sector. The war can end today. Surrender and you'll be treated with dignity. Continue fighting and we'll continue winning. The choice is yours. 300 Zarkoth ships surrendered immediately. Others retreated to regroup. And on the Zarkoth homeworld, Emperor Vexron finally realized the truth. His empire was losing to a species that had been in space for less than 200 years. Losing to primitives. His advisors begged him to negotiate. His military commanders warned him that continued war would destroy the empire. Even his own family urged him to. The coup happened quietly, in the middle of the night on the Zarkoth homeworld. Imperial guards, led by General Zarlok, entered the Emperor's palace. They met no resistance. Even the Emperor's own bodyguards stepped aside. Emperor Vexron III was placed under arrest, not for his failures in war, but for refusing to end a war that was destroying the Empire. The charges were simple: dereliction of duty and endangering the Zarkoth people. By morning, a new government had formed. Not another emperor, but a council of representatives from across the empire. Their first act was to send a message to the human fleet. We request immediate peace negotiations. Admiral Okoye received the message aboard the Defiant. His fleet was positioned just outside the Zarkoth home system, close enough to be a threat but not close enough to be aggressive. He had been waiting for this moment. General Chen, he said over the secure channel, "We're getting peace offers. What are your orders?" Back on Earth, Chen sat in the command center with Ambassador Liu Wei and the other military leaders. They had discussed this moment many times. What would humanity demand in victory? "Tell them we'll meet on neutral ground," Chen said. "The space station at Kepler 442, and Ambassador Liu will represent humanity." "Understood," Okoye replied. Liu Wei felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. This negotiation would define humanity's place in the galaxy. She couldn't mess it up. The peace conference was held 1 week later. The space station had been chosen because it belonged to the Mrek, one of the species that had rebelled against Zarkoth rule. Now free, they offered their station as neutral territory. Liu Wei entered the conference room accompanied by General Chen and Admiral Okoye. On the other side sat the new Zarkoth leadership. Council Chair Murtok, General Zarlok, and surprisingly, Fleet Commander Talzok. "Commander Talzok," Chen said with surprise. "I thought you were still our prisoner." "I was released," Talzok replied. "My people wanted someone at these negotiations who understands humans. I'm apparently the only Zarkoth with that qualification." The two sides sat down. Representatives from other species watched through view screens. The entire galaxy was watching this moment. Murtok spoke first. "Ambassador Liu Wei, on behalf of the Zarkoth people, I apologize for the war our former emperor started. We were arrogant. We underestimated you. Many of our people have died because of that arrogance." Liu Wei nodded. "And many of ours. War is terrible. That's why we want to discuss peace. What are your terms?" Murtok asked. There was resignation in his voice. He expected harsh demands. Tribute, territory, subjugation. That's what victorious species always demanded. Liu Wei pulled up a document on the holographic display. The Zarkoth delegation read it, their expressions growing more confused with each line. "I don't understand," General Zarlok said. "You're demanding—" "Nothing?" "That's not quite accurate," Liu Wei corrected. "We have several demands. First, all species currently under Zarkoth control must be given the choice of independence. No forced subjugation." "Agreed," Murtok said immediately. "We were already planning this. The rebellions have shown us that ruling through fear doesn't work." "Second," Liu Wei continued, "there will be no reparations paid to humanity. No tribute, no territory ceded." The Zarkoth delegation stared at her in disbelief. "I'm sorry," Talzok said. "Could you repeat that?" "No reparations?" "Correct. We didn't fight this war for money or land. We fought it because you attacked us. Now that the war is ending, we have no need for reparations." "But that's not how war works," Zarlok protested. "The victor always demands something." General Chen leaned forward. "Commander Zarlok, did you watch those documentaries we broadcast during the war? The ones about human history?" "Yes, they were disturbing." "Then you saw that humans have fought thousands of wars. We've learned many lessons from those wars. One of the most important lessons is this: harsh peace terms just lead to the next war. If we crush you, take your resources, humiliate your people, then in 50 years or 100 years there will be another war. We don't want that. So what do you want?" Murtok asked. Liu Wei smiled. "We want friends, allies, trading partners. We want cultural exchange. We want to share our knowledge and learn from yours. We want our children and your children to grow up in a galaxy where war is the last option, not the first." She pulled up another document. "Here are our actual terms. 1. Recognition of human sovereignty. You leave us alone, we leave you alone. 2. Establishment of diplomatic relations. Embassies, trade agreements, cultural exchanges. 3. A mutual defense pact. If either of our peoples is attacked by an outside force, we help each other. 4. Technology sharing. We'll teach you what we know. You teach us what you know. 5. A joint task force to help rebuild worlds damaged in the war, both human and Zarkoth colonies." The Zarkoth delegation sat in stunned silence. "That's it?" Talzok finally asked. "Those are all your demands?" That's it, Liu Wei confirmed. Murtaugh's eyes filled with emotion. In 50,000 years of Zarkoth history, no victor had ever offered such generous terms. Why? Why are you being so merciful? We started this war. We attacked you. We tried to conquer you, Chen answered, because we understand something that your empire forgot. Peace isn't built on conquest. It's built on mutual respect and mutual benefit. Yes, you attacked us. Yes, we defeated you. But continuing to punish you doesn't benefit anyone. It just creates resentment and future conflict. Besides, Admiral Okoye added with a slight smile, we've learned that the best way to deal with former enemies is to turn them into allies. It's much harder to go to war with someone when your economies are intertwined and your children are friends. Murtaugh looked at his fellow counselors. They nodded. We accept your terms, he said. All of them. And we thank you for your mercy. It's not mercy, Liu Wei said gently. It's pragmatism and hope. Hope that the galaxy can be better than it has been. The treaty was signed that day. News spread across the galaxy within hours. The war was over. The humans had won, but instead of conquest, they offered partnership. Other species began reaching out to humanity immediately. If the humans could defeat the Zarkoth Empire and then offer friendship instead of domination, maybe they could be trusted. Maybe they were different. 3 months later, General Sarah Chen stood on a stage at the new Galactic Council headquarters. The council had been reformed, no longer dominated by the Zarkoth, but representing hundreds of species as equals. Humanity had been invited to join. Chen had been asked to give a speech explaining humanity to the galaxy. She stood before representatives from thousands of worlds and billions of beings, and she spoke simply. Many of you have asked why humans fight the way we do. Why we're so good at war. Why we're also so committed to peace. The answer is simple. We come from a hard world, a dangerous world. For our entire history, we've faced threats that could destroy us. Sometimes those threats were from nature. Sometimes they were from each other. She pulled up images of Earth. Beautiful landscapes, harsh deserts, frozen tundras, dense jungles. This is our world. It made us tough, made us survivors, made us fighters. But it also taught us that survival requires more than just fighting. It requires cooperation, building, creating, caring for each other. We spent 10,000 years at war with ourselves, Chen continued. We fought over everything, religion, resources, territory, pride, and we got very good at war. Too good. We created weapons so terrible that we had to make laws banning ourselves from using them. We developed strategies so effective that we had to create rules to make war less horrible. But eventually we learned something important. We learned that the strongest society isn't the one that wins every war. It's the one that doesn't need to fight. We learned that the real victory isn't defeating your enemies. It's turning them into friends. She paused, looking out at the assembled delegates. When Emperor Vexron declared war on us, our generals laughed. Do you know why? Not because we thought it would be easy. Not because we weren't taking the threat seriously. We laughed because we knew something the Emperor didn't. We knew that we had spent 10,000 years learning how to win wars. And we knew that winning the war was the easy part. The hard part, the part that really matters, is winning the peace. The Zarkoth are not our enemies anymore. They're our partners. We're working together to rebuild, to create something better. That's the real victory. Not the battles we won, but the peace we built. The council chamber erupted in applause. Later that day, Chen met with Commander Talzok in a small cafe in the station's civilian sector. He was now the Zarkoth ambassador to Earth, helping to build bridges between their peoples. I still think about that day, Talzok said. When the Emperor declared war and your generals laughed. I thought you were insane, Chen smiled. And now? Now I understand. You laughed because you knew. You knew that your species had survived worse than us. You knew that you were prepared for war in ways we couldn't imagine. You knew you would win. That's part of it, Chen agreed. But there's more. We also laughed because we knew that even after we won, we would offer you peace. We knew that the war would end with us as allies, not as conquerors and conquered. We could see the entire path from declaration of war to friendship. And the absurdity of it all, the fact that the Emperor couldn't see it, that was funny.